The wealthy man decided to firmly dissuade the penniless suitor from his daughter, but when he arrived at the orphan's house, he was stunned. Andrew Allen adjusted his jacket and sat in the back seat of the Mercedes. The driver gently pressed the gas pedal, and the car slowly drove towards its usual parking spot. Soft jazz played from the speakers. The man was lost in thought. He was about to tell his daughter that he had found the perfect match for her, and soon she would meet her future husband. This was going to be something. Nancy had never been known for her docility, and Andrew himself, who easily managed 100 subordinates and was known as a strict boss, found it impossible to handle his daughter's temperament. Her mother would have been proud of her if she had been alive. Soon, the car stopped at the gates of a 2-story mansion. Andrew still hadn't decided when it would be best to tell his daughter everything. It was probably better to do it after dinner. She was usually in a much better mood after eating than before. When he entered the house, Nancy was nowhere to be seen. She was probably busy with her own affairs. Andrew sighed in relief and handed his jacket to the maid. "Andrew, good evening. Dinner will be served in half an hour." The woman briskly shook off the coat and hung it up in the wardrobe. "Thank you, Sharon. Is Nancy home?" "Yes, she has hardly left today. I barely got her to have lunch." "Well, that's something at least." The man bitterly chuckled. After changing clothes, he went down to the dining room. As promised, Sharon had already set the table. Nancy was still not visible, so Andrew went to the stairs leading to the second floor and called for his daughter to come down. After a few minutes, a slender figure appeared. She was wearing sports leggings and an oversized sweatshirt with the emblem of one of the top universities in the country where she used to study. "Nancy, what does this look? You look like a teenager, and you've already finished your studies. Maybe you could wear something a bit more feminine?" "Oh, Dad, don't start. You know this is much more comfortable. And you could also try wearing something simpler than your suits. How can I show up in such a state? What will people think of me? Am I going to beg for alms?" The man laughed. "Well, you're saying that too. Yeah, Dad, you're such a dinosaur. Modern businessmen wear nothing more formal than jeans, and it doesn't stop them from managing billions." "Oh, it's all nonsense. Sit down already, I'm hungry, and, please, put away your phone. I'm reading an interesting article here. They say that soon we'll all switch to eating crickets and dried worms, and they'll make flour from them. So the whole world already understands that meat is not good." The girl pushed the salad bowl towards herself and speared a few leaves with her fork. "Don't turn into a rabbit. Will you still love me if I become a rabbit? Don't talk nonsense, Nancy, just eat." As Andrew had guessed, Nancy was in a good mood. He needed to take advantage of this moment. "Daughter, I need to have a serious talk with you. I hope it's not about my personal life." The girl straightened her back and furrowed her brow. "That's exactly what I want to talk to you about." The man lowered his head, preparing for a stream of criticism. "I'm not young anymore, and you're at that age too." "What age am I, Dad? Are you saying that in a couple of years I'll be called an old maid?" "Nancy, don't start. You know I care about you. I don't want you to spend your life alone. It didn't seem to bother you much when I was a kid. And I won't be alone, I have Nathan." At that moment, the quietly standing maid hurried to leave. She already understood where this was going, and she didn't want to be a witness, let alone be reminded of Nancy's childhood among the governesses. "And who exactly is this Nathan of yours? Just tell me, God forbid something happens to me, will Nathan be able to provide for you properly? Or are you planning to live in a dorm and scrape by on $100 a month? Nathan at least truly loves me, and by the way, I have an economics degree. I earned it myself, so I'll manage to take care of myself. All right, I've arranged for you to meet with Jim, Thomas Cole's son, and you'll be there, or you'll have to start supporting yourself sooner than you think. Do you understand?" The man slammed his hand on the table. His daughter was no longer listening. She ran up the stairs to the second floor and slammed the door, locking herself in her room. Nancy opened the window wide and took a deep breath of the evening air. She felt her heart return to its usual rhythm. The girl flopped onto her bed and took out her phone. There were no messages from Nathan. She opened the social network and scrolled through the news feed. Soon, she heard a persistent knocking on the door. "Nancy, don't you dare slam the door when I'm talking to you." Her father's voice sounded stern and authoritative. "And make sure to wear a dress tomorrow, not like a ragamuffin. Do you hear me?" The girl jumped off the bed and went to the music player. She pressed the play button and turned the volume up to the maximum. The room was filled with the sounds of a trumpet and the sea. "I can't hear you, Dad. I'm meditating." The phone in her hands vibrated. Finally, Nathan had finished work and was ready to chat. He said he wouldn't be able to see her today but would be happy to meet tomorrow. The girl tossed her phone and rolled her eyes. "Well, fine, at least I'll have something to do instead of going to a boring dinner with Jim's family." Nancy recalled meeting Jim at one of the college parties. He was so drunk he could barely stand. Later, she saw him hitting on two twin girls from a parallel group. When the party ended, she saw him in the bushes by the exit. It looked like he was throwing up. Ugh. The girl shuddered at the memory. The orange sun signaled the approaching sunset. Nancy stood by the wardrobe, choosing an outfit. Among the many baggy clothes, there were a few new dresses in their covers. It would be rude to let her father down. Thomas was a decent guy, but his wife was a real shrew. She certainly wouldn't keep quiet and would have her 2 cents to say about Nancy's upbringing. The girl took out a red floor-length dress with a high slit on the right leg and put it on. Looking at herself in the mirror, she remembered seeing a pig show on TV where one of the winners had a bright red ribbon. The girl sat on the bed and took out her phone. The dress was uncomfortably tight and squeezed her lungs. Nancy went into the social network and searched for Jim's nickname. In the latest photos, he was at a club with half-naked girls. In the previous ones, he was on a sandy beach sitting in a lotus position, with the caption "Transforming Reality." Nancy snorted and closed the app. The only thing Jim could transform was his father's money into parties. The girl tossed her phone onto the bed and stood up. Finally, she was able to take a deep breath. She unzipped the hated dress and threw it on the floor. No way, she wasn't going to deal with this idiot. Nancy pulled out a comfortable gray tracksuit from the wardrobe and put it on. At the gate, she heard a familiar honk. Looking out the window, Nancy saw Nathan's car. The girl quickly gathered her hair into a high bun and ran up the stairs. Putting on her comfortable sneakers from a well-known brand, she dashed outside and headed towards her waiting boyfriend. The car sped down the highway and soon turned toward the park. "Nathan, can you believe it? In the 21st century and these medieval rules," Nancy's voice rose in indignation, "he wants to take me to a viewing like some show horse. Treating me like an asset. It seems to me you're dramatizing things. I think your father is worried about you and wants to provide you with a comfortable life, given the opportunity." "Oh, this isn't an opportunity, it's a disaster. The guy is such a jerk, ugh. Have you tried talking to your father?" The boyfriend drove the car into the park's parking lot. "It's useless, he doesn't listen to me. As soon as there's any issue, he threatens to cut off my money, and that's the end of the conversation." The couple got out of the car and, holding hands, stepped onto the walking trail. "Nathan, why are you defending my father? Aren't you worried that he wants to marry me off to someone else for the sake of money?" "I'm not defending him, it's just that he clearly wants what's best for you. And let's be honest, you're used to a high standard of living, and what can I give you with my taxi driver's salary? I love you, so I also want you to be happy. And you think I can only be happy with money?" The girl pulled her hand away from him. "Am I practicing meditation for nothing? I'm so in tune with the world that money doesn't have any value for me." The girl pouted and turned away. "You're really something, Nancy. By the way, remind me, how much did your last retreat cost? 10,000 for a week? By the way, that's not expensive for such an event." "Oh, definitely. I'd have to save up for a year for that. The boyfriend tried to look into her eyes. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's clear what you think. You also see me as a spoiled girl. You know what? Fine. Just take me to that damn restaurant. The old car started on the third try. From the speakers came the voice of the radio host. It's spring, which means it's time for change, and we're playing a song by Nirvana. Seeing Nancy's upset expression as she stubbornly looked out the window without turning, Nathan realized he hadn't managed to get his point across. Wanting to reconcile with his beloved, he took her right hand with his right hand while his left remained on the steering wheel. Nancy, you misunderstood me. I just don't want your father to be angry with you. If he puts you under house arrest again, we won't see each other for a long time. Maybe it's for the best. You won't have to suffer thinking about how much money it takes to make me happy. Oh, don't start. You know how much I love you. I know. By the way, what time is it? I think I left my phone at home. Oh, I'm probably already really late. Andrew listened to the series of unanswered calls. His daughter wasn't picking up. He took a sip of whiskey from his glass and set it down on the table, turning to the guests. I can't reach her. What if something happened? Honestly, she'll be the death of me with her behavior. The man loosened his tie. Well, what can you do? They're young and stubborn. You remember how Karen was at her age, ugh. Thomas, you're trying to smooth things over again. Karen was a completely different matter. She was my wife, while Nancy is a daughter, and you know how nerve-wracking it is to keep an eye on children. You're right about that. Thomas looked at his son sitting at the table. The young man had spent the whole night at the club and was now nursing his headache with champagne. So, what's the news? Have you managed to get through to her? Asked Mary, Thomas's blonde wife. No, Mary, I can't reach her. A waiter approached the table. How is your evening going? Can I help you with anything? Yes, Jim perked up at the table. Bring another bottle of champagne and something seafood, maybe oysters. I don't know, just make it something I'll like. The waiter nodded and walked away. I'm going out for a smoke. Who's coming with me? I'll go with you, son. The blonde woman got up from the table and grabbed her small handbag. The smoking room was empty. Jim sank into one of the soft chairs surrounding a round marble ashtray and reclined his head against the cushioned back. Mom, why even bother with this girl? I like my life as it is. I don't think I'm ready for marriage. The young man took a drag and exhaled a large cloud of watermelon-scented smoke. Jim, don't be an idiot. Family life has nothing to do with it. Your father wants to merge assets with Andrew. Besides, he's tired of always cleaning up after you and hopes you might wise up. What are you talking about? I'm a gift from fate, not a son. Of course, the blonde woman shook the ash off her thin cigarette. Your latest stunt, losing at the casino and causing a scene, cost him a fortune. Oh, come on, it won't bankrupt him. It's your way of thinking that worries him. He no longer wants all his assets to go to you after he steps down. He needs someone reliable to be around to help you. Andrew he trusts, they're old friends, and his daughter, though she has a strong personality, still has brains and won't waste everything on clubs. She looked at her son with reproach, unlike you. Another watermelon cloud filled the room. So, what if it doesn't work out with this Nancy? Then he'll pass everything to the board of directors, and you and I will be left with the allowance they give us. And keep in mind, we won't be setting the amount of that allowance. The woman stubbed out her cigarette in the ashtray, and it went out. Mom, by the way, I heard that Nancy is seeing some guy, a mover or a taxi driver, a working class type, in general. That makes the prospect of the allowance even more concerning for you. The woman stood up, straightened her back, and headed for the door. Let's go, and please try not to get drunk. Thomas finished his last oyster. The whiskey decanter was empty, and Mary nervously glanced at the elegant gold watch on her wrist. Well, it wasn't a bad evening. Thomas's face was flushed from drinking, and his eyes sparkled like two olives. He patted Andrew on the shoulder. trying to cheer up his friend's disappointed behavior. Yeah, right, I wanted everything to be nice, you know? And Nancy? She just doesn't listen. Andrew, you've really spoiled her. The blonde's voice was irritated, and each word seemed to come out separately from the others. Mary, don't start. Thomas's red face stretched into a smile. Well, isn't that so? Andrew, understand me correctly. We've known you for ages, but what if these were other people? Do you realize how embarrassed you would be? It turns out you can't even control your own daughter. Mary, don't start. Oh, Thomas, leave me alone. The blonde waved off her husband and crossed her arms over her chest. We've been preparing all day. She ran a hand through her beautifully styled hair. We canceled our plans. And for what? Just wasted time? Mary. No, Thomas, she's right. She'll get what's coming to her. The man tapped his fist lightly on the table. The failed suitors had left first. Andrew waited for a message from his driver that he had arrived and went outside. The cool evening air made his eyes water. As he blinked and looked for his driver's car, he noticed a familiar old car parked near the restaurant. He had seen it near his house several times. It couldn't be a coincidence. This Nathan could never afford dinner at such a restaurant. A familiar figure in a gray hoodie appeared in the front seat. What a damn fool! The blood boiled in the man's veins. He clenched his fists and headed toward the car. With a sharp yank, he tried to open the door, but it stubbornly jammed. What is this old heap? The man had to yank the handle several times before the door finally opened. Ah, there you are, daughter. Dad, I'm sorry, I left my phone at home. Left your phone, you say? Well, it happens. Andrew's voice sounded falsely kind. Let's go, my car is here. I'll drop you off where you left it. Dad, Nathan will take me, I'm just late. I said quickly get into my car, the man barked. His daughter's behavior irritated him. She was arguing again. And sitting here with this pauper, showing her attitude. I've been embarrassed for you all evening. Hello, Andrew, Nathan spoke up. Nancy really wanted to come. We just got delayed. The car broke down. It took a while to start. Nathan, right? The young man nodded. Nathan, please don't get involved. Just go where you were going, and I'll deal with my daughter myself. After all, she's still under my care, so you can just leave. The man roughly grabbed his daughter by the elbow and pulled her out of the car. She almost fell, but managed to stay on her feet. Andrew slammed the old car's door loudly and led his daughter to his car. The accommodating driver in a sharp suit had already opened the rear door for them. This was the last straw. This Nathan, who appeared out of nowhere, was ruining all the plans. He needed to be dealt with. Only one person could solve this problem, the head of security working for Andrew. The burly man assured him he knew how to handle it. He suggested a few options, and Andrew chose the one where the young man would lose his car. From what he remembered from conversations with his daughter, she was very fond of that old heap and had saved up for it for a long time. Moreover, if he lost his car, he wouldn't be able to work as a taxi driver, which should make him leave town. Just hire guys that Nancy doesn't know, or else, if she figures it out, she'll make my life miserable. And make sure not to hurt the guy. I don't want her to start feeling sorry for him. I'll never get rid of that troublemaker if she does. Of course, Andrew, we'll just give him a scare. We'll do everything perfectly. I have reliable guys. I vouch for them. All right, get to work. Nancy finished her meditation and took a sip of lemon and mint water from a clear plastic bottle. She was determined and decided not to put off the conversation with her father any longer. The girl ran up the stairs to the first floor and found her father. He was lying on the couch, reading the latest issue of Forbes. Dad, I need to talk to you. Nancy sat on the couch next to her father and twisted a lock of hair around her finger. What's up? I need to withdraw some money from my card. The girl turned her eyes away. How much, and for what? Well, it's for a good cause, about $200,000. Nancy tried hard to sound casual, but her voice betrayed her with a quiver. And what's this good cause? Another shamanic course? Planning a trip to Goa? You just got back recently. Her father put the magazine aside and sat up in his chair. No, something just happened. Where is this something? What happened? Don't tell me you got into some trouble. No, Dad. Andrew's phone vibrated, and when he read the incoming message, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. So, daughter, go on, what were we talking about? Dad, I need $200,000 for a good cause? What do you need the money for? Never mind. The effect of the meditation evaporated, and a lump of resentment formed in the girl's throat. She turned away, trying to hide her teary eyes from her father. Nancy, come on. What happened? Nathan is being blackmailed by some thugs. I thought only you could help. Thugs? And did he ask you for money? No, of course not. He doesn't know. They want to take his car from him. That old wreck of his? Well, that'll save him from some problems. What happened? He says another car cut him off and braked right in front of him, and he couldn't stop in time, so there was an accident. Some thugs were involved, and now they're demanding his car as compensation. He needs it for work. Without it, he'll lose his job. The girl sniffled, and then he'll definitely go back to his village. And you thought Daddy would pay for your boyfriend, who doesn't know where the brake pedal is. No, Nancy, don't make things up and don't get involved. Difficulties are good for men, and I don't want to hear about this anymore. Nancy stood up abruptly, tossed her hair back, and resolutely headed to her room. Her worst fears were confirmed when Nathan texted that he had to give up the car and was now planning to go to the village where he had a small house left to him as an orphan. Well, if that's the case, she would go with him. The girl took a large lilac suitcase from the closet and started packing whatever she could grab. There was a knock at the door. Nancy quickly shoved the suitcase under the bed. If her father understood what she was planning, he would definitely lock her up. The door creaked open, and Sharon's red-haired head appeared in the doorway. The woman carefully entered the room with a stack of fresh towels in her hands. Nancy, should I put these away in the closet? What are you having for lunch? She approached the closet and opened the door. Seeing that the clothes were haphazardly hanging on the hangers and some were lying on the floor, having fallen off their places, the woman looked at Nancy in surprise. In terms of tidiness, Nancy was usually impeccable. Her things were always in their places. Nancy, what happened, dear? The woman approached Nancy, whom she had cared for many years, and, taking her by the shoulders, looked into her eyes. They were welling up with tears. Sharon saw the corner of the suitcase sticking out from under the bed and glanced at the door. She went to the slightly open door and quietly closed it. Returning to the girl, she sat on the edge of the bed and gestured for her to sit next to her. So, dear, tell me, what are you planning? Nathan is planning to go to his village. He has problems in the city. The girl sniffled. And you're planning to run away with him, am I right? Yes, but if Dad finds out, he'll stop me. Oh, he certainly will. So, dear, what are you going to do in that village? It's so dull there, with mosquitoes and flies. It's not as great as it seems at first glance. Life in the countryside is hard work, and you don't even know how to cook. Well, I don't know. I'll figure something out. Do you think I won't manage even that? My dear, the woman stroked Nancy's hand. Don't even think about it. You'll manage, but it could be a tough test. What if Nathan finds some other job in the city? And besides, it's a serious step. Your father will definitely be unhappy. Are you sure you want this? I'm not sure, but I think if I don't do it now, I'll always remain a puppet in his hands, a bird in a golden cage. He doesn't take me seriously at all. He doesn't see that I've grown up. And what does Nathan say? He says not to worry, we'll manage. Well, that's good if that's the case. Listen, your father will surely be furious as soon as he realizes you've left. The first thing he'll do is block your bank cards, so take out all the cash you have. By the way, it's better to leave your cards at home because as soon as you use them somewhere, he'll see your location right away. Wow, how do you know all this? I love watching detective shows, the woman smirked, and one more thing, do you remember when you were 13 and I taught you to cook? I almost burned the kitchen down back then. Exactly. Nancy, this is very serious, be careful. Your house is probably wooden, and by the time the fire department arrives, everything could be burned down. When you cook, try not to get distracted. Now, what else? The woman bent down and pulled the suitcase from under the bed. Take some warmer clothes. There may be drafts in the house, and they are very dangerous. And also, the woman pulled out a pair of denim shorts from the suitcase, examined them, and put them back. Nancy, if you walk through the grass, you might get ticks, so keep your legs covered if you're going outdoors. Sharon, what would I do without you? I don't even know, you'd be lost, the woman laughed. All right, get ready. Nancy reviewed her wardrobe and packed more warm clothes. To prevent her father from figuring out her escape too early, she arranged with Nathan to meet her at the bus stop. Once everything was packed, Nancy looked at herself in the mirror one last time. Her face didn't look determined, rather, it wore a mask of fear of change. Her phone vibrated, notifying her that the guy was already at the stop. Nancy quietly descended the stairs from the inner courtyard, where Sharon caught up with her. The woman had a book in her hands. Nancy, take this with you. It's a cookbook I got from my mom. It has a lot of simple recipes. Oh, Sharon, this is such a valuable gift. I was thinking of just using recipes from the internet. You won't have the internet there, you silly girl. My dear, good luck, and come back soon. Thank you, Sharon. The girl hugged the woman tightly. Quietly opening the door to the backyard, Nancy stepped over the threshold. The door closed automatically behind her. Nathan was waiting by the main entrance, waving and walking towards her with a smile on his face. Nancy put a finger to her lips, signaling him to be quiet. The couple quickly made their way to the bus station, where they boarded a long-distance bus. Nancy stared out the window, nervously shaking her leg. The bus had barely left the city when she received a message from her father. Nancy, I'm ashamed of you. You ran away like a rat, without even saying goodbye. Live how you want. Next came a notification from the bank that her accounts were frozen. Tears streamed down the girl's cheeks as she turned to the window. Sharon had been right. Life in the village was nothing like her familiar city life. Nancy had to learn many things. Nathan quickly found a job on a farm, leaving early in the morning and returning when it was already dark. Sharon was also correct about the internet. It was only available at the local grocery store, which was a 10-minute walk from their house, so the cookbook Sharon gave her turned out to be a real lifesaver. It detailed everything in minutes, what to put in and when, how long to fry, how long to boil, and all the specifics. Not everything turned out perfectly on the first try. For the first couple of months, they often ate burnt or oversalted food. But Nancy tried hard to be a diligent housekeeper and helped Nathan. She remembered the videos from the internet where breakfast featured poached eggs, toast, and avocado. Yes, she used to love that breakfast, but now it seemed like some silly indulgence. Her breakfast ended up being scrambled eggs with sandwiches, tea, and porridge. It was a substantial breakfast, but by lunchtime, she was starving because physical work required a lot of energy. At first, she was afraid she would gain weight, but instead, her clothes started to become too big. They had an old-fashioned washing machine. Clothes had to be put into a vertical centrifuge, where they were washed for a while, but the spin cycle was manual. Nancy had never seen such contraptions before. Clothes had to be placed between two cylinders, and the handle had to be turned to wring out the water. There was something meditative about it. Nancy dried clothes outside when the weather was good. Nathan had strung up some lines and made a support from a long wooden beam. After drying outside, the clothes smelled especially pleasant. Closer to summer, fresh vegetables from the new harvest began to appear in local stores and at Sunday markets. In this regard, Nancy had nothing to boast about. She tried to plant some crops in early spring, but nothing happened. The only things that sprouted in her small garden at the house were lettuce and onions. The girl once boasted about this achievement to a local vendor with whom she occasionally exchanged a few words, but the vendor said that onions grow anywhere. Nancy wasn't upset. She looked at her young seedlings as if they were her children and was proud of each new centimeter of their height. Andrew was beside himself. Initially, when he realized that his daughter had run away with that ragamuffin, he was furious. He said a lot of foolish things to her, nearly fired Sharon, suspecting she knew something and hadn't told him, even though he paid her. For a while, he tried not to think about Nancy, although it was hard. The man immersed himself in work, leaving early and returning late, but age began to take its toll, and after a month, he started suffering from migraines. His body was demanding rest. So, Andrew returned to his previous schedule, and with the return of free time, his thoughts about his daughter also returned. To distract his friend, Thomas invited Andrew to a golf club outing. "No, Thomas, tell me, what am I doing wrong? I never really forbade her anything, and she just up and ran away. And with whom? If only it were for a good reason." "Andrew, you're wrong. She showed a lot of courage. She had to make the decision to leave her father's protection and move to some remote village. And it's not just out of the blue, as I understand. Something happened with that guy." "Oh, don't remind me. See, the girl has grown up." "Grown up? To be honest, I hope she gets tired of these games soon and comes back home. I'm really worried about how she's doing. God, she's so sheltered. She's never been out in nature, only those retreats on the islands. And what are they eating? I'm afraid to even imagine." The man laughed. "That shelteredness might actually work in your favor." Andrew sighed heavily and sat down on a nearby bench. "Thomas, are you okay? You look pale. Is it your blood pressure? Should I send for a nurse?" No, Andrew, don't bother. Let's just sit here for a while. I don't like how you look. What's wrong with you?" "I have cancer," the man said weakly, lowering his head and closing his eyes. "I just found out a few days ago." "How could this happen? Is there anything that can be done?" "Yes, there is. The doctors say I need surgery, but I haven't decided yet." "Why are you waiting?" "I'm afraid of the surgery. I don't know. I haven't even told Mary and Jim yet." "What now? What should we do? Could you give me a ride home? Sometimes I have these episodes where it feels like my whole body is in pain, but it passes after an hour." The news of his best friend's illness filled Andrew's heart with even more worry. He was anxious about his daughter's well-being. Fortunately, through his connections, he quickly found the address where she was living and sent his driver there. When the driver returned, he reported that the house where Nancy lived was flimsy, with only 3 pathetic saplings in the yard, and the overall scene was depressing. He had only seen Nancy briefly when she was cooking at the kitchen window, but he had to hide to avoid being noticed. Given the dismal picture, Andrew was certain his daughter would be back soon. However, after 2 months, nothing had changed. Nancy was still missing, and the scout driver reported that things seemed to be improving. He saw that the small garden plot was covered with neat rows of seedlings, clothes were drying in the yard, and apple trees were in bloom around the property. Could it be that his daughter had managed to cope with this kind of life? Just like her mother. On one hand, Andrew felt a strange pride in his daughter, but on the other, he was disappointed. He had worked for so many years without rest, depriving himself of seeing her grow up, all to provide her with an easy life that he never had. And now? She was living in a village, tending gardens, and washing for some Nathan? Andrew's frustration reached a point where he decided to visit the village himself and explain things to Nathan personally, since he seemed so impervious. The washing machine drum made a clattering noise and stopped. Nancy set aside the vegetables and went to see what happened. There were no visible changes, but the drum wouldn't spin. She pressed the start button twice, but it didn't help. "Nathan, there's something wrong with the washing machine." What's the problem? Came the voice from a distant room where the guy was busy with some repairs. It's not spinning. Let me take a look. Nathan appeared in the kitchen with a stool in hand. I'll set this up here, but don't sit on it. One of the legs isn't secured yet. What's that delicious smell? I'm making soup. This time it's definitely going to turn out well. Nathan gently kissed Nancy and began inspecting the washing machine. Nancy, I don't want to upset you, but it looks like we'll need to take it apart. We should move the clothes somewhere for now. Let's put them here. Nancy reached for a large metal basin hanging on a hook. Her vision blurred, and she almost fell. Nathan quickly caught her. Hey, are you all right? I think it's past. Maybe I was just hungry. I'm starving. Watch yourself, don't get sick. Nathan took the basin from her hands and used long wooden tongs to transfer the clothes from the hot water, creating a huge pile of wet, colorful rags. Nancy grimaced. It looked unattractive and smelled strongly of laundry detergent. She realized she might have overdone it with the detergent. Her stomach let out a hungry growl, and Nancy hurried back to cooking. The vegetables were sizzling in the pan, and the potatoes were already in the pot of water. Damn it, Nathan cursed and jumped up from his knees. He was holding his hand and walking back and forth, bent over in pain. What happened? I cut myself, just great. Nathan, you need to treat the wound. Let me see. Nathan extended his hand and opened his fist. The cut was deep. It needs to be cleaned. Look at all the dirt around it. Don't worry, I'll rinse it off. It will be fine. We need to bandage it. Nancy opened the medicine cabinet and took out a bandage. Oh, look, we have medical alcohol too. Should we use that to disinfect? Isn't there anything else? Maybe hydrogen peroxide? No, we're out of that. It'll have to be alcohol. Nancy pulled out a dark bottle and opened it to smell it. Ugh, definitely alcohol. Go outside and rinse it off, or everything in here will smell. The stream of cold water washed away most of the dirt, but it still needed to be cleaned. Nathan decided to move away from the kitchen window so Nancy wouldn't see how much it hurt and went around the corner. The alcohol hit the open wound, and Nathan was momentarily overwhelmed by the stinging pain, forgetting where he was. At that moment, a black Mercedes stopped at the gate. Nancy saw the car just as her father was standing at the front door. She was flustered with anxiety and hurried to turn off the frying pan with the cooking vegetables. She approached the door, opened it, and found her father standing on the threshold. She took a step back, unsure of what to say. So, are you going to invite your dad in? Yes, of course, Dad, come in. Nancy stepped away from the door and watched as her father in his expensive suit walked into the kitchen. It looked so out of place that, for a moment, the whole house seemed like a dilapidated shack. Her father frowned, surveying the place. So, this is how you've settled in, daughter. Well, it's cozy here. The man glanced at the pile of wet laundry and snorted. The washing machine broke down. Nathan is fixing it. Nancy looked at him warily. She was happy to see her dad, but his expression was anything but welcoming. She wasn't sure what to expect from him. At that moment, she smelled something burning, turned to the stove, and realized with horror that she had messed up the settings. The carrots had turned into black charred bits, and the kitchen was filled with gray smoke. Nancy hurried to turn off the burner, making sure she had done it correctly this time. She opened the window to ventilate the room. Now, the smell of laundry detergent mixed with the burnt odor. How are you doing, sweetheart? Andrew watched the kitchen chaos with a sense of satisfaction. Maybe I should have called you in advance to let you know about my visit. I guess I came at a bad time. It's just that I couldn't reach you. There's no cell service in this backwater, right? And you don't call your old man either. Are you upset with him? The man took the first available stool and sat down. Dad, everything's fine. I'm just cooking, and the washing machine broke down, so it's a mess. Well, I can see that. A smile appeared on Andrew's face, but where's your Nathan? Hello. Nathan appeared in the doorway with his hand bandaged. He took a step forward into the kitchen, and with him came a strong smell of alcohol. Wow, Nathan, did you start drinking because of her cooking? No, I just cut my hand. Nancy felt like she couldn't breathe. The smell of alcohol added to the other unpleasant odors, creating an awful mix. She felt an intense salivation and a nauseous feeling rising in her throat. Without wasting any time, she rushed to the bathroom and threw up, feeling relieved in her stomach. When she came to, washed her face with cold water, and came out, she was met with concerned faces from her father and fiancé. I must have eaten something bad. Nancy shyly adjusted her hair. Dad, I'm glad to see you. I'm sorry for the mess today. Everything didn't go as planned. Sweetheart, don't worry, as long as you're healthy. Andrew fidgeted in his chair, struggling to resist the urge to rush to his daughter. Oh, Dad, that chair. Before Nancy could finish, one of the chair legs gave way, and the man fell to the floor. A tense silence hung in the air. It's broken. Andrew looked at his daughter in confusion. He couldn't help but laugh. Well, Nancy, you're going to drive me to my grave one day. Nancy and Nathan hurried to help him up. It's been a while since I've experienced something like this. All right, come on, tell me how you're managing here. It's not bad. Look, did you see the lettuce growing? The girl pointed out the window at the neat green garden beds. Is that what made you feel ill? No, Dad, it's fine, really. I meditate while tending to it, and it's all organic. Well, that's good, of course. The man turned his gaze to his daughter's suitor. And you, Nathan, what do you have to say? We haven't really met. Tell me about yourself. Nathan brought over another chair, the sturdiest one in his house. Nancy brewed mint tea and poured it into cups. So, Nathan, tell me about your parents. Well, I don't know my father, and my mother died when I was little. I was 3 at the time. She got hit by a car, and they couldn't save her. I'm sorry to hear that. No, it's okay. I hardly remember her. So who raised you? Do you have any relatives? No, I'm not sure. Nathan set his teacup on the table. I probably would have been found if there were any relatives. After my mother's death, I went to an orphanage and grew up there. By the way, I inherited this house as an orphan. Well, it's not much. The man looked again at the flimsy building. I'm not complaining. Many people don't even get that, even those who live with their parents. You're right. The man nodded and took a sip of tea, remembering how he and a friend had rented a tiny room with bedbugs in a dorm. So, what was your mother's name? What's your last name? Maybe we can look for your relatives. Regina Brewer, but I don't know if there's anyone to find now, and if I even need to. The guy took Nancy's hand. I've got someone to take care of. Hearing Nathan's mother's name, Andrew looked closely at the young man's face and suddenly hurried to get ready to leave. Nancy thought he knew something. Dad, what's wrong? Are you leaving already? Yes, Nancy, I don't want to be a distraction. You have enough to deal with because of me. You two should stop playing Romeo and Juliet and come back to the city. We'll think about it, Dad. Sweetheart, Andrew went up to his daughter and hugged her. I miss you. Nathan. The man shook the young man's hand and rushed out the door, heading quickly to the car. What's with him? Nathan didn't expect their meeting to end so abruptly. I don't know, maybe he remembered something. Nathan, there's something more important right now. I think I'm pregnant. As soon as the phone showed a signal, the man dialed Thomas's number. While the phone was ringing, he loosened his tie and unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. Hello, Thomas, how are you? Still alive. What's up, Andrew? You sound agitated. Thomas, that guy Nathan, I found out who his mother is, and you won't believe it. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but then I looked at him, and he's just like a little version of you. Well, maybe I'm just overreacting. I was really worried when I saw Nancy, so it might be just my imagination. Oh God, just tell me already. I'm not going to die without knowing this secret. The man cleared his throat. All right, here it is. His mother is Regina Brewer. That could be a coincidence. The man's voice dropped. It could be, but I took a closer look and realized he's just like you when you were young. That can't be true. Exactly what I thought. You don't remember if Regina was pregnant back then, do you? Because by age, he fits. I don't know what to do now. Order a DNA test, then you'll know for sure. That's a good idea. And what about Regina? Where is she now? She died in an accident. She got hit by a car. I see. Andrew, thanks for calling. 2 weeks later, Thomas received the test results. Nathan turned out to be his son. The man was shocked by the news and rushed to the village to meet him. When his mother abruptly opened the door and entered the room, Jim immediately realized that things were bad. Her face showed anger, and the guy quickly closed his online poker page and turned away from the computer. Mom, what happened? Something happened, Jim, something happened. The woman walked to the window and opened it, inhaling the fresh air. What happened, son, is that your father has found a biological son, and now he's gone to meet him. What do you mean? What other son? Just that. When we met, he was seeing a girl named Regina, but he ended up staying with me, and apparently, Regina was already pregnant. Oh, what's going to happen now? The woman covered her face with her hands. Mom, why are you so upset? After all, he has spent his whole life with us. Are you afraid he'll leave you for this Regina? He loves you. Oh, Jim, don't be silly. I'm not afraid that he'll leave me, especially since Regina is dead. The woman turned to her son and crossed her arms over her chest. It's just that everything we have is now in question. Everything, you understand? I don't understand, Mom. I think you're overreacting. The guy took a grape from a fruit bowl on the computer desk and popped it in his mouth. You need to take your mind off things. How about we go to a spa? Jim, where did you get this idiocy from? If he has a biological son, think about who will inherit everything if your father dies. What do you mean? The guy straightened up in his chair. Exactly what you heard. You're not his biological son, so compared to a biological one, you have fewer rights to the inheritance, especially knowing Thomas. He's such a kind man that now he'll definitely be plagued by guilt for not knowing about his son all these years and will try to make amends. He wouldn't throw us out. No, of course not, but we don't know about his son. Who knows what's on his mind? And if Thomas dies, who knows what will happen to us? What should we do? The woman gripped her white hair with her fingers. Do we need to get rid of him? Jim, don't be ridiculous. Do you see yourself as a murderer? No, Mom, no one needs to be killed. All right, don't worry too much. Maybe they won't even get along. We'll take things as they come. A couple of days later, Thomas persuaded Nathan to come over for a visit. Thomas had been enthusiastic all morning, something that hadn't happened to him in a long time. Jim observed his stepfather's behavior, and his elevated mood irritated him. For the past 2 days, all Thomas talked about was his wonderful new son. Thomas asked Jim to get along with the guy. The mother had been drinking these past 2 days, and now her face was slightly swollen. She had ordered a massage service, and a young Thai woman had locked herself in the large bathroom with her. The father sat in the living room, drinking coffee, occasionally getting up and going to the window overlooking the yard, looking out for the driver's car. Jim went to his room, considering what to wear. He decided it would be good if he impressed the new potential family member. He pulled out his lucky sweatshirt with Vegas 2015 written in black rhinestones. He had won it in Las Vegas during his first trip there and believed it brought him good luck. When he came out into the hallway, Jim bumped into the Thai woman, who had finished her procedures and was preparing to leave. So, how do I look? The guy twirled in front of the tired young woman. You look great. The girl adjusted her large bag of massage equipment and smiled shyly. Can I pass? Don't you want to stay for dinner with us? Thank you, Jim, but my next client is waiting. Wow, so businesslike. Jim approached the girl closely and whispered in her ear, next time, don't plan anything afterward. She didn't respond, and with her head down, she slipped past him. These girls are so uptight, you can't even joke around. The guy ran up to the first floor and approached his father. Dad, when is your little frog in a box arriving? Jim, don't be sarcastic. I think he'll be here soon. They've already set the lunch table in the backyard. I'm starving. Oh, look, here come the guests. The metal gates slowly parted, and the driver's car entered the property. Father got up, walked to the center of the room, and looked up at the second floor. Mary, he's here. Where are you? I'm coming, Thomas, I'm coming, came Mary's voice, and soon she appeared at the top of the stairs. She was wearing an elegant white suit, her light hair styled in soft waves, and a gold watch adorned her wrist, highlighting her golden tan beautifully. Mary, you look magnificent. Father extended his hand to her as she descended, and they walked toward the main door. Jim didn't fall behind and, rolling up his sweatshirt sleeves, followed his parents. A tall, slender guy in all gray and unremarkable clothes was approaching them along the wide stone-paved path. Nathan, Father spread his arms in welcome. I'm so glad you came. Meet my family. He hugged the guy tightly and introduced him. This is Mary, my wife, and this is Jim, my son. Jim nodded in greeting. Nathan, I hope you're hungry. We asked to have the table set in the backyard. Mary didn't dare to hug the unfamiliar guy and flushed slightly. She gestured for everyone to follow her to the table. The introduction went well, even too well. Father and Nathan seemed to be on the same wavelength, and the light white wine eased the tension, leading to a flood of conversation. Thomas and Nathan exchanged jokes and were like two peas in a pod, one young and the other, unfortunately, old, wrinkled, and on the brink of death. In the evening, after Nathan left, Jim grew gloomy and decided to switch from wine to something stronger. He went down to the wine cellar and approached the cabinet where the whiskey was kept. The guy was holding a bottle with a crest when he heard his mother's voice behind him. Pour me some too. The woman's mascara was slightly smudged. This is the end, Jim. Did you see how they interact? Yes, I did. The guy exhaled and took a gulp of whiskey from his glass. The whiskey burned his lips and spread warmth inside. We need to get rid of him, son. After Nathan learned that his beloved was pregnant, he insisted they move back to the city. At first, Nancy refused, trying to explain that she liked living away from the city and had gotten used to her salad beds. But after getting soaked and chilled to the bone on a rainy day, she gave in. All evening, Nathan was feeding her teas to prevent her from falling ill and to ensure nothing happened to the baby. Father insisted that they live with him and allocated them the right wing of the house. All their belongings fit into one car sent by Father. Nancy persuaded Nathan to bring at least one salad plant with them. She prepared a large pot and carefully transplanted the plant. She asked to keep the pregnancy a secret for now. She wanted to settle into daily life first and hoped her father and Nathan would find common ground. Nancy spent a lot of time with Sharon and her father, while Nathan often visited Thomas, frequently staying with him until the evening. Nancy, you must miss Nathan, don't you? He's at Thomas's all day. They were already approaching the house when her father decided to start a conversation. Well, I do miss him, of course, but what can you do? I understand him. He's been alone his whole life, and now there's this news. Plus, Thomas is preparing for surgery, who knows how it will go. I'm glad you understand, daughter. What worries me is that Jim is always around. I don't like him, he seems so sneaky. Don't think about him. You know, I decided to surprise you. I have a little gift for you. Oh, really? What is it? You'll see for yourself in a moment. The car drove through the gates, and Nancy saw activity in the backyard. Workers in orange uniforms were moving around. Dad, what's that? I hope it's not a frog pond. I outgrew that idea about 15 years ago. No. The man laughed. It's better. Come on, I'll show you. Nancy quickly got out of the car as soon as it stopped and headed toward the backyard. As she got closer, she saw that the workers were digging beds for her. I thought you might want to grow your salad here too. Her father hugged her shoulders. Dad, thank you, that's very sweet. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. Oh, it looks like your phone is ringing. Right, Nancy took her phone out of her jeans pocket. It's Nathan. After a minute of conversation, Nancy sat down on the lawn. Daughter, what's wrong? You're as white as a sheet. The man ran to the door of the house and called the housekeeper. Sharon, bring some water. Dad, Nathan's been detained. What? For what? They say they found illegal drugs on him, but how? I don't understand. He doesn't use. Nancy, drink some water. Sharon brought the glass to the girl's pale lips. Daughter, I'll do everything in my power. Mom, I've made a decision. Jim burst into the room, catching his mother with a glass of wine in her hands. What have you decided, son? I took care of it. Nathan is no longer a problem for us. Pour me a glass too. This needs to be celebrated. Oh, my dear, that's wonderful. The woman fetched a second glass with a long, thin stem and filled it with red wine. What about father? They've already started the surgery. He should wake up tomorrow. How did you get rid of the guy? I have some connections. They slipped him something illegal, a white powder. I had to spend a bit to make sure the dose was right, but it was worth it. Now he'll be out of our way for a while. Ha, well done, son. The woman hiccuped and took another sip from her glass, spilling a few drops on her white blouse. Will he be able to escape? What if he decides to seek revenge? No, he won't even realize it's me. Besides, I have connections there. No one will be able to get him out. He's in for the long haul. Well, that's great, son. You're doing so well. The woman hugged her son, and he felt her warm, drunken breath on his neck. As long as things go well for you, that's all I need. Tears shone in her glassy eyes. Mom, you should lie down. Let me take you to your room. Thomas came to his senses only after 4 days. The doctors said the surgery was successful, but he was very weak. When Jim and his mother entered the room, he was taken aback. He had never seen his father in such a poor condition. He was connected to various catheters and tubes, and his skin was pale gray, as if he had no life left in him. The man struggled to open his eyes and tried to sit up, but the nurse at the bedside stopped him. Mary, Jim, you've come. Oh, Thomas, you're still so weak. The woman approached her husband and stroked his forehead. Where's Nathan? Is he in the hallway? The blonde hesitated and lowered her gaze. Oh, Dad, forgive us. Jim moved closer and sat down so Thomas could hear him better. We couldn't find him. He's been out on a bender these last few days. It seems he got a taste for money. I'm really sorry, Dad. How could this be? I thought he was such a good guy. Maybe we should call Andrew. He might know something. We've already called, Dad. I'm sorry you were so wrong about him, but at least Mom and I are here. That's true, my dear ones. The man wearily closed his eyes and fell asleep. Mary stroked her husband's hand in farewell, and they left the room. Jim, he's in such bad shape. I have a bad feeling about this. Or maybe, on the contrary, everything is turning out for the best. Thomas's condition worsened, and they were no longer allowed to see him. A few days later, Mary received a call from the hospital informing her that her husband had fallen into a coma. Upon hearing the news, Jim opened a bottle of champagne. He played electronic music in the living room and put on his lucky hoodie. Mom, everything is turning out for the best. He handed her a filled glass. Don't be an idiot, it's not time for champagne yet. Oh, don't be sad, I've already poured it. Now I'll be an old widow. Who will want me if Thomas dies? Oh, don't be upset. We'll find you a new fiancé, some young guy. You'll travel all the time." The woman imagined herself on a sandy Caribbean beach in the arms of a tan surfer. She sighed heavily and drank the glass in one go. When Jim opened his eyes the next day, his head was pounding, his mouth was dry, and his nose was blocked. He realized he had fallen asleep on the couch, never making it to his bed. "Jim, darling," his mother struggled down the stairs from the second floor, looking so swollen and wrinkled that she seemed 10 years older. "Darling, I have bad news. The lawyer for your father just called me." She poured herself a glass of water and drank it in one gulp. "He's thought of everything, Thomas. He got ahead of us." "What do you mean?" "Oh, my head is pounding." She sat in a deep armchair by the window and rubbed her face with her hands. "He wrote a will. In the event of his death, all his inheritance goes to his biological son." "Don't look at me like that. It's all legal. I found out." "Damn it, when did he manage that?" "But what if Nathan is in prison?" "Then he'll get all his inheritance when he serves his time, and will be left with nothing." She formed a ring with her fingers and held it to her eye. "That's how it is, darling." Jim sat on a tall bar stool and slammed his fist on the table. The old man always liked to play it safe, and even now, lying in a coma, he had outmaneuvered him. He'd have to let that bastard go, and everything was going so well. Be thankful we found out in time. If the lawyer hadn't called, we'd be on the street. A black Mercedes stopped at a gray building with barred windows. The gate opened, and Nathan stepped out. Nancy noticed that he had lost quite a bit of weight during this time. She rushed to meet him and embraced him. "Nathan, I missed you so much." "And I missed you. We tried to get you out with all our might. I don't know who set you up, but they were some serious people. Dad pulled all his connections, but there was no result. Thank God it's over. How's our baby doing?" "What baby?" Andrew had just reached the smitten couple. "Dad, this might not be the best place for this news, but I'm pregnant." The next few months flew by unnoticed. Nathan visited his comatose father almost every day, missing the parent he had grown so close to and could now lose. Meanwhile, Nancy was busy organizing the wedding. She decided she didn't want a grand celebration and chose to arrange everything at home. She couldn't figure out where to set up the stage for the musicians, as she had practically filled the backyard with various plants. Fortunately, Thomas eventually came to his senses. He was happy to see Nathan and said he had heard him talking and telling him about what was happening now and how his childhood had been. Nancy initially didn't believe it, but Nathan said that his father had suggested holding the wedding at his house, which had a larger lot. After Thomas regained consciousness and found out that his wife and son had not visited him, he asked them to move into an apartment that he had inherited from his parents. The place was outdated, but it was